Just things that you need to survive.
Yeah,
basically.
just those bare necessities that you need.
Just the bare necessities.
Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. I mean the bare necessities.
That
was a necessity, though.
That was a necessity?
Yeah.
Was the bare necessity song?
I couldn't bear it. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 5 of our podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Niall.
And I'm Austin.
And we're so sorry. So, welcome back to another episode. This week, we're going to be talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you haven't heard of it, it's this pyramid-looking image that from bottom to top represents different needs that humans have throughout their life. Mm-hmm. And each level, there are 5 levels. Mm-hmm. And starting at the bottom is the easiest thing to achieve. And then once you get all the way to the top is usually the most difficult thing. And so,
I mean, there are actual names for them, but
yes. So we're gonna go through the 5 levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Mm-hmm. And I think we're just gonna talk a little bit about each level, and we'll probably spend the most amount of time on the very top level, which is self-actualization, which is a thing that a lot of people strive for and something that Austin and I are striving for continuously as well.
It's something that we've talked about a lot, and it's something that very few people will ever actually reach. Mm-hmm. But we'll kind of get into that here in a little while.
Yeah. So just to give everybody a basic understanding of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like I said, it has 5 levels, and the basic most level is physiological needs, and that includes things like air, water, food, shelter, sleep, and clothing.
Just things that you need to survive.
Yeah,
basically.
just those bare necessities that you need.
Just the bare necessities?
Yeah.
Are we quoting the Jungle Book now?
Oh my gosh.
So that's what, okay.
I'm so sorry.
Are you?
If we could play clips, I might go back.
Just the I don't actually.
I might go in and clip like 2 seconds of that song.
I can
and
play
throw
it on
in.
my phone. Here, you keep. Yeah.
Okay.
Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. I mean the bare necessities.
I'm so sorry.
Oh my goodness.
That was
that was great.
Cringe. I'm so
that was
sorry.
That was a necessity, though.
That was a necessity.
Yeah.
Was the bare necessity song?
I couldn't bear it. Anyways, so the basic most level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs starts with your physiological needs, and like we said, it's the bare necessities.
It's the bare minimum. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you said, food and stuff like that. You have
food,
to have
water,
food,
shelter.
And water, and to live. I mean, shelter to the best of your abilities, but. It's literally just the absolute bare minimum you can get by with, which hopefully everyone has, but not everyone does.
Yeah. And then the second level on top of that gets a little bit more difficult to achieve, and that is safety needs. That includes personal security, employment, resources, health, and property. Some people don't even get all of those.
This is true. I mean, because with this hierarchy of needs, and it has, well, as any hierarchy works, you have to have the bottom before you can have the top. Mm-hmm. So you have to, it's like a ladder or a step stool or just a...
Like a prerequisite.
Yeah, it's like a prerequisite or like just step laddered up or whatever. You have to have the bottom one before you can have the next one, before you can have the next one, before you can have the next one. And then by the time you've got all of those, well, then you can start going to the next one. So, and I mean, I'm just kind of looking at all of these. We have... I mean, just by looking at our examples here that we've got written down, I can say with some pretty high up certainty that me and you both have quite a few of these. Mm-hmm. Now, whether we actually own all of these, because like with property,
right?
Like,
yeah, I don't
actually own any property. No,
right?
But I have a place to live. My family has some property that I'm living on. So it basically things I don't have to worry about right now that I will later. But I can go ahead, and since I have it now, I feel like this could be. I feel like you could almost go downstairs as you go upstairs, which sounds ridiculous because you shouldn't be able to. However, I feel like if you have some things that you don't have to worry about in that moment, you can go ahead and while you're not worrying about those, you can work on some of these other things. So like, I'm trying to think. So let's say you don't have to worry about food. Okay, so I've got food. I know I don't have to worry about that right now. So let's worry about finding my property or my. Let's worry about where I'm going to be employed at. Let's worry about my next job. So now I can be focusing on my job, and I already know I've got my basic needs. So it really only kind of works there. It works in some of the other ones too, but we haven't really gotten into those yet. But it does kind of work in some of the other ones too. But with your safety needs or whatever, that's things that you need to feel secure in your life, things you need to keep we can even say social standing, specifically with employment. So you need a job to make money. You need money to buy food, which each of these actually kind of play in with each other.
Yep.
So like we're saying right now,
Physiological needs?
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't think of it. The physiological needs and the social needs kind of play in with each other, because if you don't have the physiological needs, you won't be able to get the safety needs, and if you don't have the safety needs, then you won't be able to get the social. I can never say
physiological.
That. Thank you, physiological. I'm so sorry, I can't say that word. The physiological needs. So without a job, you can't have money. Without money, you can't have food. Kind of a sense.
Right,
I mean,
right.
You can, but
they're very closely linked. Yeah.
Yes, they're very closely linked. That's the point I'm trying to make. I just went on for a lot longer than I needed to, so I'm so sorry.
I think I'm just going to say, just so everyone has a reference, I'm going to go and list all 5 levels so that people know where we are in context. So
thank you.
You have physiological needs, physiological needs, safety needs, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization.
Yep.
So we've already covered physiological needs and safety needs. And the third level up from the bottom is love and belonging, and that includes friendship, intimacy, family, and a sense of connection with those around you. And I think, like, especially with Valentine's Day coming up, but it's more than just relationships, you know what I'm saying? But like relationships are a lot more than just,
relationships are more than just like
a significant other.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because that's what I was trying to figure out, was significant other relationships. Relationships are the relationships you have with friends and with family and
with yourself.
With yourself, yeah, honestly.
That's a big one.
Yes, which is where self-actualization comes into play. But, you've got all of the, as long as you've got the other two, then at this point, and I kind of wanted to say this too, so esteem is our next one. And whenever you think of self-esteem, things that can tear down your self-esteem are intimacy and love and relationships and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because, with breakups and stuff like that, you get to the point where, okay, this person left me, I must not be good enough, and now my self-esteem is low.
Yeah.
And while that's not necessarily true, it will be. So you have to have this love and belonging to have esteem, but you also have to have esteem to have this love and belonging.
It's kind of like
they all kind of play in with each other.
It's kind of like
so I'm so sorry.
You know the game Jenga?
Yeah.
Where if you pull the bricks out, and if you pull out the supports, all the bricks above it are going to fall. And when the gravity of the top bricks falling, it causes all the ones on the bottom to fall. The structural integrity just breaks itself apart. And so even though love and belonging comes before esteem on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you break down your love and belonging and you don't have that aspect of your life anymore, even though esteem is more, even if you've already achieved esteem, like that can cause everything above it to break down, for example. So like even all the way back to physiological needs, if you lose air, water, food, shelter, and sleep, I mean, all the things above that don't even matter anymore because you're essentially dead. You know what I'm saying? And so it works all the way up. Like if you lose your safety needs, you lose personal security, employment, resources, health, and property, you're probably gonna lose your sense of love and belonging as well.
At least your sense of it. You may not actually lose it because you're still gonna have, family members who love you or whatever the case is. However, you're gonna feel like less of a person, and that goes in play with your esteem too. So like your self-esteem is gonna go down for that reason too.
Yeah.
So I mean, you lose any of these, and it can make the whole tower tumble. I mean, and it's not necessarily that you have to feel pressured that, I can't lose any of these, because there's going to be times in your life when you do. People fail. I've had teachers tell me before, fail and fail often, because, it's one of those things where it's going to happen. Just learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the whole point of the hierarchy of needs too, is like, learn from your mistakes, and so you don't have to be down here.
That's exactly what the podcast is about.
Yes,
That's why we're so sorry.
That's exactly why we are so sorry.
Yeah.
That's why we have the little prompt that we've been saying lately of, going to our Instagram and commenting on the post of, apologizing to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
But yeah, no, I mean, with love and belonging, you made a good point. There's a book that I've read a couple times now by W. Oscar Thompson Jr. It's called Concentric Circles of Concern. I've talked a lot about this book to you, I know. And
oh yeah, we've talked a lot about this book.
Yeah. And essentially a concentric circle is a circle within a circle within a circle and so on that all have the same center point. And essentially you are the main center point, and everything around you, all the other circles around you, are your circles of influence, or the people that have a say into your life, and vice versa, you have a say into their life.
Yeah, so whenever people tell you that you're not the center of the universe, or, you're not the sun, people don't revolve around you, they're wrong. No, I'm kidding. Don't want to boost anyone's ego too far.
It's all about your perspective, to call back to last week's episode.
Oh my gosh, it really is. But I mean...
But yeah,
in this sense that you're talking about, it almost is like you're the center. You are the center of attention. You are you're the main character, as I've been referencing lately. But you're not, in a sense. But the way that you're talking about it is, this is where it starts. Like everything in your life starts with you,
right? Because it's your life.
Yes,
it's like your perception.
Yes, your perception.
To also call back to last week's episode.
Oh my gosh. Everything in your life starts with you and branches out in these. You can call it circles. You can even, you can draw any kind of, picture you want. His book uses circles. So
yeah, but anyway, the point I'm trying to make there is in the book it talks about how, like, there's an exercise where you write down all of, like, the top 5 most dramatic events of your life, or things that you remember negatively. And then it goes on to talk about how, most likely rather than not, a majority of the things that you can think of when you think of, like, some of the most difficult times of your life probably had something to do with your relationship with another person, whether that was like a family member passing away, or a relationship ending, or you and a friend drifting apart. Most things in life are really dictated by relationships, And so I think a lot of people can really get stuck at this third level of love and belonging, because when it comes to the relationships within your life, of any type of relationship, it's kind of always all over the place, because everything is so dynamic. You never really know, one day you could wake up and the person closest to you could be gone, or something tragic could happen.
They could leave, like, in a physical and literal sense, or they could die. Either one. I mean, anything can happen in this world.
And I think that the shock of that, when people realize that that's possible, it can really cause them to get stuck. But anyway, so on to esteem, the second to last. So
your friends are dying. On to esteem. I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry. Oh, I could have worked on my transition, but it's okay.
No, it really wasn't all that bad. I just thought it was funny. It was a good transition. I just thought it was funny.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I've got my DJ transitions down, so...
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Check out my music at DJ Niall Blaine on Instagram, or at Niall Blaine on
just
Spotify.
Just a quick shameless plug as we're talking about death
Apple
and esteem.
Music, whatever, yeah. Anyway, so esteem includes respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, and freedom. I think, see, as you go up, these get more and more dangerous as well as difficult to achieve, because status and recognition...
That's okay. It's already difficult to achieve, for one. Not only is it difficult to achieve, but I'm so sorry. But it can be dangerous, like you said. I mean, because especially, like, think about it. If you draw too much attention to yourself, to the point where you've got more enemies than friends, then you'll wind up with more enemies than friends. But hey, you've got status, you've got popularity.
Yeah.
But you can get to the point where you can actually put yourself in danger.
Right. And I think when you think about status and recognition in your life, it's not about the status that other people view you as, and it's not the recognition that you get from other people, but it's about the status as in, like, you view yourself as, okay, I'm a wholesome person, I have good intentions, or when you think of recognition, you recognize yourself as someone who, makes mistakes. It's almost kind of like self-awareness. Maybe that's what it should be instead. I don't know. I mean, I can be recognition in the typical sense, but what I'm saying is like, if the main goal is self-actualization, then all of these things that we're talking about should be in regard to the self.
Yes.
So if we're talking about status and recognition, it shouldn't really matter what your status is in the eyes of other people or what you're recognized for from other people. It should be what you believe your status is. Yes.
Yeah, which is another thing another example we got here is self-esteem.
Right.
Like, and that's what I was actually trying to say earlier is like your self-esteem can be affected by these other things though. Your self-esteem can be affected by the lower tiers. It can also be affected by the upper tier, the only one above it.
Right, yeah.
But I feel like the only way I could do that is if you felt like a failure for not being able to achieve it. Which we'll get into it here in a second, but you really shouldn't because, again, it's almost impossible to achieve.
Yeah, yeah. So now we're at the top of the pyramid here, and that is self-actualization. And this chart defines that as a desire to become the most that one can be. Now, I think that's a very subjective statement.
Throwback.
Yeah, throwback to last week's episode. But I think, as I've said, self-actualization is something that you and I have been talking about, discussing extensively, working towards, making changes in our lives to achieve.
I mean, I think that's kind of funny since we're both like, only 20.
Right. It's a lifelong process. Like it's almost like the journey to self-actualization. You can also apply the infinite road to that. For anyone who listened to last week's episode as well.
I was actually going to make that exact reference because the definition that you just pulled up and talked about right there was, being the most that one can be, and that's impossible.
Right.
That is, like, in a literal sense, you can never stop achieving things. You can, like, I'm going to be a teacher right now. I'm going to school right now to get my degree in education and mathematics education. I want to be a high school math teacher. I think I might have mentioned that before, but I'm wanting to do that. I can get that degree. 20 years from now, I can get, my master's, not my master's, my
bachelor's.
No, I was looking for doctorate.
Oh, you're going to get your doctorate?
Maybe, I don't know.
Oh, Dr. Voger, I like that.
Nah, I don't know about that. I was just saying that I could. I'm not saying I'm going to. I'm just saying that I could. So I could go back and get that. So there's another achievement. I can go back and get, my associates or bachelor's in chemistry. And I'm just talking about schooling. I'm not talking about anything else. I mean, there's all kinds of things I can do in the world. If I lived forever, like we talked about, the second episode or something like that. Is that whenever we talked about no death? Yeah. So if I lived forever, there are an infinite amount of things that I could achieve and an infinite amount of things that I could do, which is why I talked about the first, back then that I wasn't going to do anything. But during the time that, let's say I live, I don't know, maybe 78? With the way things are looking now,
that's fair.
Well, you know what? We'll just say 80 to round it out. I don't know why I said 78. I'm so sorry, but we'll just round it out to 80.
At least it was an even number.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that gives me roughly 60 years left. I'm not 20 quite yet, but it gives me roughly 60 years left. So let's say that I live to be 80. In 60 years, there's only so much that I can achieve. But there's more that I could have achieved. So I haven't actually ever reached self-actualization because I never actually did everything that I could have done. And it's not even just mental.
It's the process.
Yes, it is. It's the process. And it's the thing of because it's reaching all that one can be. So even if you think that that's a mental thing, so okay, I have reached my full potential. That's basically what it is I've reached my full potential.
Right.
So if we think in our minds okay, I have reached my full potential. I don't want to say godlike, but there are some people who develop a God complex with it. But let's say I have just all the knowledge that I'm ever going to be able to obtain. I have reached peak me. This is who I am. This is who I'm going to become. This is the end. This is it. Whenever I die now. I have reached everything. I have maxed out. That's not possible because the way our brains function, even if they do actually literally quit growing at some point, which do they?
I think at age 25, you stop having neurological growth, but you still have neurons firing and stuff like that. Yeah, your brain is still functioning.
So, I mean, that would almost imply that I can't learn any new things at that point. And because it's implying that, we know that that's impossible because I can just go back to school anytime I want and learn more and new things.
Yeah.
Then that's impossible too. There are still other experiences to do. Again, teacher. If I became a teacher and taught until I was 80, I could still, become a truck driver.
Right. Yeah.
Or build cars or work at a car dealership or instead of math, teach history.
Right.
And those are all physical things. But I mean, even mentally, I can still do more.
Yeah.
And that's the only problem I've ever had with self-actualization is it's impossible to achieve. It's like in the way that it's defined, it is impossible to achieve.
Yeah. It kind of, if I had to put it into a simple breakdown, it's kind of like it's almost like a what if type paradox where it's like you can reach the end of your life like you're saying and you could have achieved all of these things, but there's always there's that what if factor where what if you had lived longer and you would have been able to do more things. Well, in that case, then everything you would have achieved would have been whatever you achieved if you had lived longer, but you didn't. So you were never able to reach your full potential.
Exactly.
But then even if you did live longer and then you eventually die, what if you had lived longer than that and achieved even more things and so on and so on?
It's all a big what if question.
Yes.
And I mean, the only way for you to ever actually reach full potential and everything you could ever do, you have done it. You've done it all. You've learned all the knowledge in the universe is to die. That's the only way to do it because there is no actual way, physical way, mental, emotional, whatever state you want to talk about. There's no way to do it on Earth.
Isn't that so interesting? The only way to reach the full potential of self is to lose oneself. Wow, that is. Oh, I'm getting chills.
I like that too.
I like that a lot.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
It's like the thing because we're talking about the infinite road. So if we had lived on this infinite road, and I mean not literally, but if we lived forever, then we would have to learn everything, do everything. And, well, for one, we can't even learn all the history of the world in that amount of time.
Right.
And then on top of that, I mean, we might be able to, but it'd take, millions of years to learn it all. And by the time you've done that, there's more. And by the time you've done that, there's more. And because the world is constantly changing. So if you live through all of this, you have to self-actualize every year. So it's an impossible thing to do. But I did really like that. What was what he said again exactly? Oh yeah, the only way to reach one's full potential is to lose oneself fully.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit because now that we've established that it's more or less impossible to reach full self-actualization and full potential, I still think that it's worth it to try to achieve that even though we've deemed that as impossible. Personally for me, I still find purpose in trying to become a better version of myself and trying to improve like that.
And that's I wanted to add that too. And I don't mean to cut you off here. I'm so sorry.
No,
but it's like what you said. Just because you can't reach this full potential doesn't mean that you should stop trying.
Right.
And it's kind of like how we talked about it was episode 2, right? That we talked about. What if you lived in this perfect world?
Yes, that was episode 2.
We're just gonna say it's episode 2. And he just told me it was. So, but anyway, so it's kind of like that. So you have all this time. Chances are you're not going to do anything, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do anything. And I guess I probably forgot to mention that in that episode. But that's what it's more like. Is like what you just said was just because I'll never actually reach it doesn't mean I should stop trying because. Just because you can't reach it, you can continue to better yourself for it. You can, the rest of the time that you're going to live here, you can make better.
Yep.
So
we can kind of just ping pong back and forth, but I'm just trying to think of a couple practical applications for everybody listening about ways that they can improve themselves. And we've done a lot of things, I know, in the last few months that we've done to just kind of improve ourselves. But one example that a couple people might know of is Matthew Mcconaughey. He is the main actor from the movie Interstellar, which is also a movie that we will be extensively breaking down on this podcast.
There will be an
entire episode at least dedicated.
There might have to be 2 episodes on that one, and I apologize. I am so sorry in advance for if you do decide to listen to that one. I'm sure it's going to be interesting as it can be, but it's probably going to be a long one.
It will be a very good episode,
especially once we. And whenever that all happens, I will be encouraging you to watch the movie.
Yep.
Just because by then we will have talked about all the theories that we had about things that were actually in that movie before watching the movie.
Yeah.
And then we watched it and it was all in the movie. So it was a mind-blowing movie for me. Once you listen to all this and kind of think about it the same way that we do, it will be for you too.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we are able to talk about it, we'll all kind of gain a better understanding of it. But I'm looking forward to it.
Me as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be a while, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. We'll hopefully within the next couple months, we'll get to do it in a nice little extensive breakdown of that movie. We'll probably need to rewatch it in order to do it, just to refresh our memories again. But anyway, Matthew McConaughey, he was either at the Grammys or the Oscars. I forgot which one. I know one of those is for movies, and I think the other is for music. But either way, I don't remember. Regardless, he was receiving some type of award, I believe it was, for Interstellar. And someone asked him who his hero was. And this is a popular video on Instagram and YouTube. You might have seen it as well. Someone asked Matthew McConaughey who his hero was, and he said, "My hero is me 10 years from now."
Oh my gosh.
And it flows so perfectly with the concept of the movie Interstellar as well with his podcast, because in 10 years when he achieves that version of himself 10 years in the future, guess who his new hero is? Himself 10 years from then. And so he always sets the bar 10 years away so that he has something to fight to achieve.
I feel like that would eventually fail.
How so?
Because one day he's going to die.
Well, right.
It might not have been 10 years by now. But no, I do want to add this real quick. So it's funny, and I don't know who else seen this or not, but it's funny that he mentions that it's 10 years from now, because that whole movie is based on the past, the present, and the future.
Yep.
Which is one of the biggest topics that we're going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be one of the more complicated ones,
Yeah.
but it's going to be one of the biggest ones, and it's one that I have just loved talking about.
Yeah, I'm excited
because
for
we
that
have
one.
talked about it like extensively. That's what brought us to watch the movie. That's actually part of what brought us to start this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking really forward to talking about the past, present, and future and that movie, because that movie, for him to say that, is kind of like a just kind of like a callback on the movie.
Yep. And so with that, I think that's a good transition into just talking about some practical applications for trying to get at least, work towards self-actualization. And actually, I want to do a shameless
plug.
Yeah, I want to do a shameless plug right here. It has nothing to do with me, but there's a podcast out there hosted by Lewis Howes called The School of Greatness, and it's one of the podcasts that I'd been listening to. I listened to it for quite a few months. It's been a while since I've listened to it, but it's a great podcast. And every guest that he has on the podcast, he asks them a question, something like, "What do you define as greatness?" For their form of greatness, and what would they need to do to achieve that? And it's almost like self-actualization. And anyways, if anyone wants to listen to a podcast that is geared around that, definitely check out The School of Greatness by Lewis Howes.
I may actually have to look at that up.
Yeah, very good podcast.
I've never listened to it either, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah. And anyways, so I'm gonna relate this to something that I've been working on for a while, which is actually related to the phrase "we're so sorry" in general. So over the summer, before I even had this podcast idea, I came up with a separate idea called "I'm so sorry," which is revolves around myself and the things that I've specifically done that I was so sorry for to myself, both in the past, in the present, and in the future. And I'm actually working on a memoir or an autobiography. Currently, it is called "I'm So Sorry, an Existential Epiphany Memoir" by Niall Blaine Bartel. And
because that's what 90% of our conversations are existential epiphanies.
Yep.
Like what we were literally
epiphanies.
talking about earlier, like to achieve one's full self, you have to lose yourself
Mm-hmm.
in the music. Or was it the moment?
Oh my gosh. Dude, he's going to be at the Super Bowl. Eminem is.
Eminem's going to be at the Super Bowl this year?
The Super Bowl lineup is Eminem, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, it's not Lil Wayne. It's not Chris Brown either. I don't remember the other one.
Still, that's insane.
Yeah, it's a crazy lineup.
I had no idea that he was going to be there. That's who I was quoting. He has a song called "Lose Yourself." Yeah.
Anyways, so I started this thing called, my memoir is going to be called "I'm So Sorry," and it's not going to be published like anytime soon. Like I think that publishing a memoir in your 20s is kind of cocky, because who am I to say that I know anything about anything, because I obviously don't.
I mean, people do that though.
That's fair,
people
but
in their 20s, and I mean, you got billionaires in their 20s and stuff like that
That's
who
true.
are just, I don't want to. Again, I'm so sorry, but like, they're know-it-alls or whatever.
Yeah.
Who
Well, that's what I don't want to be.
Exactly.
You know,
And
I want to. Yeah.
Listen, I know you're not like that. Everybody listening, knows that you're not like that. And if you do wind up actually like publishing this or whatever, on the back of it, once they read it, they're gonna know that you're not like that.
That's true. That's true. But anyway, I started this book / memoir called I'm So Sorry, and it started out as a note called Niall's Essential Handbook of Life. And I break everything down into categories. And so I've got a couple categories. I've got some for relationships. I've got some for just regular self-improvement. I've got notes that I take about personal finance and all these other things. And
it's kind of like a little personal advice note.
It is a personal advice note, yeah. But it's like a letter to myself, which is kind of like what this podcast is, which is like a message of forgiveness to ourselves throughout, our past, present, and future versions of ourselves as well. And anyways, I'll just go ahead and list if you'd like to think about some things that you've done. Even if I say something similar that you would otherwise say, if you want to just mention some things that you've done, I'm just going to list a few here. So for self-improvement in general, probably one of the biggest things that I've done is read the Bible, and because I really view the Bible as like, it's really one of the only things in life that I can think of that is a like one-stop shop for everything that you can possibly go through in your human lifespan. And it has got guidance for spirituality, relationships, friendships, hardships, turmoil, loss, depression, finances, righteousness, gratitude, perspective, and everything else. And I've just really been using that in the concept of, okay, I'm dealing with this thing, whether I'm trying to rejoice about something or whether I'm trying to mourn something or get through something or continue, positive times and try to maintain a positive outlook on life. It works for everything. And that's been one of the greatest things for me. And just to be able to not just being like a Sunday churchgoer type of thing, but to actually be a student of, because really the Bible's got so much wisdom. And even if you don't believe in it. That's exactly what I was going to say. Yes. It's got such a moral code, and people have got their vices with religion. I understand that, and I'm not going to force anything on anybody. But the thing is that anything that I ever learn, whether you want to call it wisdom or anything else, is not going to come from within me, because at nature, I don't think humans are particularly sound when it comes to morale and things like that. We want to strive to be that, which is why we're striving for self-actualization. But the whole thing that we've been saying about self-actualization is that it's unachievable. Except when you can, what's the best way to learn something? To learn it from someone else. What's the best way to learn self-actualization is to learn it from the one man who actually achieved it, which was Jesus Christ, in my humble opinion.
No, you're correct.
And
I
so,
think so too.
And so for anyone who's listening who isn't so keen or fond on religion, just hear me when I say that anyone who claims to be like a guru or to know all these things about life and things like that, it's kind of difficult to know stuff.
It's kind of difficult to know all the things of the universe if you didn't create the universe.
Yeah, and like we also said, the phrase that we said, it's impossible to self-actualize until you lose the self. Except guess who also lost his self? Jesus, and then he was resurrected. So it's like he's been through it all.
He lost himself and then refound himself almost.
Yeah.
I mean, and not literally, but still.
And when we're saying his self, we're not trying to say himself, because we're saying his self as in like reference to self-actualization. So that's what we mean. He lost his self, and then regained his self is what we're saying, and that is what helped him achieve his self-actualization. And anyway, so that's just one thing. Another thing I do is listen to podcasts, and I don't usually like listen to leisure type content. So it's mostly like I'll listen to podcasts similar to ours, like The School of Greatness, or I'll listen to the Gary Vee audio experience, or I'll listen to Joe Rogan, things of that nature. Something that's going to allow me to learn. I am also very list oriented. I like to use calendars and things of that nature as well. Something that's really helped me is I have set up a Google Home routine that reminds me what I need to do every day. So I set up a lot of recurring chores and things. So for example, if I need to refill a prescription, or if I need to replace the head on my toothbrush or buy more flossing pics, or if I need to, like, I've got one to clean my room every other weekend. And so when I wake up in the morning, I'll just, use the wake word for Google, which I'm not going to say because it's going to activate it if I do, but I'll just say, hey, what do I need to do today? And it'll be like, you have this and this in your calendar for today. And I'm like, oh, cool, thanks. I don't have to take up the mental capacity to remember it. And it's a recurring thing on my Google Calendar. So it always reminds me and I never miss anything important. So
meanwhile, I'm just sitting here waiting for it to go off at any minute because he keeps mentioning it. I'm just like staring at it.
I'm avoiding the wake word. So, but anyways, so I'm like I said, I like to use a calendar. I like to I like to time myself. I like to have designated times to do designated things and so on. I try to be positive and smile. A cool psychology fact, there's a school of thought within the world of psychology that they believe that any feeling that you have, you actually express the physical sign of that emotion and then you feel the emotion first. So if you feel happy or you laugh, you actually smile and then you feel happy or laugh. Now,
interesting.
Sometimes I've experienced the opposite. Like sometimes I'll feel happiness and then I'll smile. But they say that it's still the cognitive relay of you knowing you're about to smile that then causes you to be happy. So that's why they say, don't worry, be happy. Just like put a smile on your face because it can actually cause you to be happy. And so that's another thing I've done is just try to have a positive mindset, as well as prayer, to relate that back to reading the Bible. I've talked about this before as well. It's just to meditate. There's a couple different types of meditation that I've also talked about, but I like to spend time in nature. I like to keep my finances organized, make sure that I have a budget that I set for myself that I try to stick to. And I'll just list a couple more and then I'll let you talk about some things that you've done. But I think another thing that's
really
important.
Got one in particular, but
okay, that's fine. Another thing that I have is hobbies, and I've seen this. I got this online, but it said something along the lines of like everyone needs to have 5 hobbies: one that makes you money, one that keeps you in shape, one that keeps you creative, one that builds your knowledge, and one that grows your mindset. And I think that's very true. I'm not going to go like listing all of my hobbies again because we've talked about that before in episode 2.
We've got a lot.
But yeah, I do have a lot.
We both do.
But I also journalize. I write and record everything. I try to do like daily summaries on my phone. Like I'll just go in my voice messages on my phone and just say like the day's date and talk about what happened. And yeah, Austin and I both, we really like to record things on our phones. It's actually how like one of the first ways we got the idea for the podcast. We'd been having so many conversations and just recording them on our phones that we were like, we should turn this into a podcast. And so now here we are, and we're so sorry.
Make sure that we're not the only crazy ones. I mean, what? I didn't say. No, we're not crazy. I'm so sorry.
But anyway, I'll just list off a couple more here, and then I'm gonna let you say.
All right.
But setting goals, plan ahead, quit bad habits. That's a very subjective thing, but
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I think that this all relates to on the road of self-actualization, because acknowledging your bad habits, and that's another thing we talked about last week, is that to recognize the problem is taking the first step.
That's exactly what I say. The first step to fixing the problem is recognizing that there is one.
If you can recognize something that you need to fix within yourself, you're already doing so well. And so to recognize that you have a bad habit and then to enact a plan to quit that bad habit is a very good thing. Making connections, building true friendships, just being a good person, expressing gratitude, reconciling with those that have done you wrong, having friendships with those who challenge you and make you grow and have a similar mindset. And I have you listed here in my notes. You and one other person who we're actually going to have as a guest on this podcast eventually. And actually one other thing that I'm going to mention, which is compartmentalization, which is a big word. But what I mean by that is, think of like a bookshelf. A bookshelf has got multiple shelves on it. And so each shelf holds one row of books, and the books are kind of contained within that specific shelf. And so a way that I use compartmentalization practically in the real world is when I use my phone, I will only use my phone in my studio room. I don't bring my phone into the room that I sleep in. And the way that that's compartmentalization is that I'm essentially putting limits on where I use my phone.
Yep.
And by doing so, I allow my brain to start to associate my actual bedroom with just sleep, because I don't
Which is actually something that like scientifically you're supposed to do.
Yep.
Like they say, don't do your homework in your room. Don't be on your phone.
Yep.
Before a certain time in your bed. Don't, sit there and just watch TV or whatever. You don't eat in there. You don't do anything but sleep in your room.
Yep.
And now I have a problem with that because I have a shower and everything, right beside of my room. So I can't leave my room to go take a shower or whatever, or go use the bathroom. But regardless, it's meant for just sleep.
So essentially, compartmentalization can work in a lot of aspects of your life, but essentially what it is it is designating the use of certain things or certain routines for certain rooms in your house or certain times of the day or certain times of the year and so on, and trying to keep everything organized within a specific set of bounds that allows you to keep everything within your life organized. I hope that kind of makes sense, but like the example that I gave of only using my phone in my room, or for example, when I go back to school to get my bachelor's degree, it's most likely going to be online schooling. And what I'm planning on doing is, instead of coming home and doing my schoolwork at home, I'm actually going to go to the public library or a place with free Wi-Fi, whether it be McDonald's, and I'll have to look like a creep sitting in the back.
Well, you'll be going to LU at that point, though, right?
Well, I don't know. Anyways, yeah. So whenever I decide to go back to school to get my bachelor's degree, if I'm doing online school, I'm only going to do my schooling at the public library or somewhere in public that's not at home, so that I don't associate being at home with doing school. Because when I was doing my associates and late into my senior year of high school when COVID first started, I would start associating being at home with doing school because I was always doing homework and stuff at home. And that's really how I use compartmentalization. It's trying to avoid associating certain tasks with certain times of the day, which is why you dedicate certain times of the day or certain areas of your house, or like all those examples that I gave. So when I say that, like, I'll do schooling at the public library or somewhere public like Gap Creek Coffee House, I'm trying to avoid associating doing my schoolwork at home, because then when you start getting comfortable and stuff like that, then you start to slack and things like that. So I try to keep myself disciplined within that compartmentalization. So for everyone listening, I hope I gave a couple good examples as to what I mean by that. It can be kind of confusing, but I'm sure there's some other resources online that you can find about compartmentalization within one's life. But anyways, Austin, I'm definitely handing it off to you by now because I've talked a lot. So
that's okay.
Feel free.
That's okay. I like talking sometimes, but I like whenever you kind of go off on it too. It's nice because there was an episode a while back where I did not shut up for a while, so it's warranted. But I really only had one, and this pertains specifically to my life, because I've had a lot of kind of rough times as of the past year or two. But my whole thing is, you actually talked about it kind of plays into compartmentalizing and kind of moving stuff around in a way, or limiting yourself. My main thing, though, is removing negative influences.
Oh, yes. I love that.
Yes, because, and I hate to be this way, but I'm going to say this anyway, and I'm so sorry to anyone listening that I may have done this to, or that is thinking about doing it to somebody else, or has had it done to them or whatever. But sometimes you need to cut people out of your life.
Amen.
There are some people that are negatively influencing you.
Yep. And they're holding you back from self-actualization.
They are holding you back from that. They're holding you back a lot of times from happiness. And I've had that happen to me before. And I've had to cut those people off. I've had to, and sometimes, here's the thing, this is where it gets really difficult too, is you can cut somebody off and not cut off their negative influence, because they'll still be in your head. Exactly. Yes. In your mind. Yes.
Wow.
So not only do you have to cut off the person as a whole, and this is something I've had to do with some people, and I've heard of other people doing this to other people and stuff like that. I mean, just removing them from your life.
Yep.
I've done this to multiple people, and I hate to have done this to those people, because I try to not keep my friendship from anyone, or myself from anyone. I try to give everyone the same opportunity, or a similar opportunity anyway, with me to be my friend, because I'll be friends with anybody, But there are some people I've had to cut off and stuff like that, and I may have, blocked them on Snapchat or blocked them on Instagram or removed their number. There's very few people I've actually done that to, but there's people I have done that to, or Facebook or whatever. That's all just social stuff. But I mean, in person, you don't need to actively avoid them. And
Right.
It sounds like I was almost going to say, like you need to try to actively avoid them. But if you're actively avoiding them, then you're actively thinking about them.
Oh,
and the more,
I like that.
Yes, the more that you're thinking about them and the more that it's like, okay, I need to stay away from this place, I need to stay away from this place, then they're on your mind. They're in your head and they're not going to get out.
Wow.
So it's blocking your self-actualization, it's blocking your happiness. So the only way to actually get them out of your life and to remove that negative influence is to quit thinking about them. But that's also, here's where it kind of, it's like a, what's it
paradox?
called? Yes, thank you. It's like a paradox because the less you think about them, the more you're thinking about them. Because then it's like, okay, I'm trying not to think of so-and-so.
You then realize that you're not thinking about them.
Yes, you then realize that you're not
makes you
thinking
think
about that
them,
person.
yeah.
So you have to actively not think about them.
Well, because if you're thinking about them, who are you not thinking about?
Exactly.
Yourself and your self-actualization.
Yes. So you have to get to the point where not thinking about them becomes habit, which
Yeah.
I've done with some people and stuff like that before, is it just eventually you don't think about not thinking. And I really hope that made sense. And I'm sorry if it didn't. I'm so sorry if it didn't. But you've eventually stopped thinking about not thinking. It's almost like blanking out.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you're just not there anymore.
I'd like to throw in an analogy if I can.
Of course, go ahead.
So a way that I like to envision this within my own mind when I think of people that I have to distance myself, like, okay, this is how I envision people. People to me are kind of like a fire. And when you have a fire, depending on the state of the fire, whether it's like a small campfire or a huge blazing forest fire, there's a distance where you can get a certain amount of like feet away, and you're in this Goldilocks zone where you're not too hot, not too cold, you're not getting burned, but you're not freezing to death. You're, like I said, you're in that Goldilocks zone where there's a fair push and pull between the relationship or the friendship or whatever it is, similar to what you and I have. We're kind of in that Goldilocks zone. But if someone is toxic to you and you get too close to that fire, you're going to get burned.
Yes.
Or even if someone is good to you, especially if someone is good to you and you let yourself get too far distance from them, you're going to freeze to death. You're going to get cold. You know what I'm saying? You're going to become cold inside. You're going to become, what's the phrase I'm looking for?
I was going to say hollow, but
Yeah, I mean, you're just going to become kind of almost too selfless or too selfish.
yes.
You're not going to think about anybody.
You can be self-actualized without being selfish. I
Yes,
really feel like that's
exactly.
a possibility.
Right.
But my whole point was to cut off those negative influences. And it's not even just always people. Because
Exactly.
Yes, because and here's the thing too. One thing, and this is actually another thing that I've been doing too, is making new memories, and I feel like it kind of plays into this too. There are places I've been to and stuff like that I don't necessarily say caused me trauma, but they kind of caused me trauma. There are some places that just, it's like
The association.
Yes, the association just makes me feel icky, makes me hurt, makes me feel things I don't want to feel. So I go there with other people. I go there with
purpose.
you on purpose. I go there with you. I've went to several places as of the past couple of months with you and a couple of our other friends, not just to replace those memories, because then I'm thinking about those memories.
But eventually you won't.
Exactly, but to make new ones.
Yeah.
Because I go there and then I start making these new memories, and they basically covers up the other one, which you'll never hear me say to cover up something, because if you cover it up, it's just, you're going to keep covering it up, and eventually it's just going to fall off, and you're going to go through all of it again all at the same time. But in this case, if you have already gone through that process, so like I'm not going to name anything specific, but like me and you have gone to places before, I have already worked through the pain and the trauma and everything that went with that place, the association of that
Mental
place.
association is a very fluid thing.
Yes.
It's a lot easier to change than a lot of things that are more static. So it works in this sense. Yeah.
But I had already kind of worked through it to the best of my ability, and then I went and made a new memory on top of it. See, because there is an order of these things, because if you, and I've seen so many people do this, they will just cover up things and cover up things and cover up things, and the more that they cover it up, think about it like, you can even think of it like a blanket. Okay, so eventually, if you cover up yourself with so many blankets, well, one, it's going to get hot, but that's the real life reference, but eventually it's going to get so heavy, it's going to fall off.
It's like,
or you're going to have to take it off. You get so hot and it gets so heavy. You're like, man, I can't hold this anymore. So I have to take it off. And whenever you take it off, that's whenever you start having your mental breakdowns. That's whenever you start having your I can't even think of what else, but you're just episodes of sadness or whatever, depression, whatever, because it builds up over time. And then if it builds up, eventually it's going to come out, and it's not going to be fun.
It's like trying to fix a broken bone with a Band-Aid.
Yes. And more Band-Aids.
Yep.
And more Band-Aids. And more Band-Aids. And eventually those Band-Aids are going to come off, and the bone's still not going to be fixed.
It has nothing to do with the amount of Band-Aids. It has everything to do with the way that you're approaching the situation incorrectly. Not saying you, but like...
No, you're correct.
If you're using Band-Aids to fix a broken bone, you're not doing it right. Yeah.
Exactly.
But see,
which is why you need to try to, and it's not even self-actualize, you need to try to work on yourself through some of these problems. And we've been completely off topic, and I'm so sorry, but you need to work through some of these problems first before you can do other things with those problems. So, you work through so much of it to begin with, realize as much as you can about it, and come to terms with as much as you can with it. And then begin either making new memories or finding a new way to fix it and to make yourself better almost. But I mean, that's just kind of the best
foundation.
way. Yes, exactly. And that's the best way that I could really describe it there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so sorry that
I think a lot of people do just cover things up though. They act like things never happened. They want to just replace things with people, with physical items, with money, with status.
And you can't, I mean, you can do that and it'll work, but for a very short amount of time.
For a very short amount of time.
Yes, it will not work for a very long time.
Because you're not learning the lesson when you do that. You're just trying to escape at that point. And something that you said that I like, which really makes me respect you a lot, is saying that when you would deliberately try to, like what you said, you're trying to fix that foundation. You're going to those things, whether it's a physical place or a place within inside yourself. You're going to those places where you're vulnerable, where you're hurt, and you are mending that. And I think that takes a lot of, to use the word, like it actually takes some level of self-actualization to
and
have.
It takes some time. It's like putting in stitches in a wound, but you only do
by yourself.
Yeah,
with no anesthesia.
Yeah, by yourself, no anesthesia, once a month.
Yeah.
You put one stitch in a month, and you need 40.
Yeah.
So,
but to have the strength to go to the places where you're hurting most, as opposed to just avoiding them, you're facing those problems head on.
Yeah.
As opposed to turning the other way.
Which is. Ooh, it's a very extremely
very
difficult thing to do.
Difficult.
It's stressful, it's difficult, and especially, and here's another point I want to make just real quick, especially if it's a person that's been causing you this negativity, if that person is there again, it's going to make it worse.
They will.
Even if they don't cause a scene, you're going to feel it, and then you're going to have to redo everything you just did. Yep. However, I will say, the good thing about that is you've already done it once, at least. So if you've already at least healed from it and fixed that exact, we're using places at this point for reference. If you've already fixed yourself in that exact place or whatever, you can do it again because you know how to. I mean, it's still going to be a little difficult, but it'll be easier the second time around.
Yep.
Because you'll know how to. It's like, I don't even know. I can't even reference anything.
Like the Band-Aids trying to fix a broken bone example, if you were to just bite the bullet and admit that you were approaching the situation incorrectly and you were just to say, okay, I know I need to get a cast to fix this broken bone. When you go and break your bone again, you're going to go get the cast. You are going to go get the cast very first thing. You're not going to try to convince yourself that Band-Aids are going to work. And so I think what you're trying to say is if you go through something and you heal yourself the correct way, you don't cover it up. You really heal yourself from within, whether that means you need to get therapy or you need to really
And we
jump
can
into
talk about the correct
spirituality.
way. I mean, here's the thing. I'm 19. He's 20. We don't actually know the correct way.
It's
Nobody
so
really does.
vast and different for everybody.
It's so vast. But I mean, we can talk about different ways, like we've done it, and stuff like that. And you can try it for yourself, see if it works for you, and stuff like that. If it does, great. If it doesn't, well, maybe you need a different approach.
I don't think we claim to know or have any secret ansers or to have the answer to everything.
And we don't. So if we need to restate that, we don't know anything.
Right.
Nobody does, but we're trying to, and we're
Right.
trying to. That's kind of the whole point of this self-actualization thing is like we are trying to obtain as much knowledge as we can.
Yep.
Whether it be to our full potential or not, well, Probably won't be, but we're trying to obtain as much
We're making
knowledge
a
as we can.
conscious active effort.
Yes.
We can say that we're trying.
And to try to fix ourselves.
Yep.
So with that being said, we're trying to not only fix ourselves, but we know what it's like to try to go through this pain and stuff like that. And I've heard several people, I've even watched TV shows lately of where people have gone through similar things to where I have and been like, oh, well, just nobody knows my pain. And I'm like, I know exactly what you're going through and I want to help you. And that's part of the reason for this podcast too.
Yeah.
It's I won't call it a self-help podcast because neither of us are qualified to do that. But it's us self-helping ourselves. Yes.
And hoping that maybe
and hoping that somebody else might be able to get something out of it as well.
Yep. And so like I was saying and like what you were saying, when you teach yourself how to really heal the right way, when it happens again, you're not going to try to cover it up, because if you cover it up the first time and then it happens again, you're just going to try to cover it up again and then again and again and again. And instead of ever learning, you're always going to be trying to cover it up. And you're never going to make any progress, and your problems are going to compound on themselves. And the last thing you're going to be worried about is self-actualization, because you're going to be stuck down at the bottom trying to get your safety needs and your physiological needs, which are all the way at the darn bottom.
Yep.
So,
but anyway, with all that being said, we've went pretty long. I think it's but I do want to say just a couple things, a couple little shameless plugs here. So I'm still doing music. We both still do music. You can find me on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music. You can find me anywhere you can find music. Actually, anywhere you can find music, you can find either one of us. Anywhere you can find music, you can find both of us. He's under Niall Blaine or DJ Niall Blaine on Instagram. I'm under The Paralytic on everything. You can find me on Instagram. I don't have a Snapchat for it, but I do have Instagram. I've got a Twitter. I'm on all these other
the streaming sites.
I'm on all the streaming sites. Thank you. I'm coming out with a new song.
Technically today, the day that this podcast is being released.
Today, the day that this podcast is being released. So on Friday, February 4th, which is when this will be released. Whenever you listen to this, is whenever I have a new song out. It is called Anxious by The Paralytic. If you will give that a listen, I would be so gracious. That being said, I want to thank you for listening, but I will let Niall here do any shameless plugs he wants and kind of close this out. So,
thank you very much. Yeah, I also just want to thank everyone for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and self-actualization. And hopefully you also were able to pick up on some practical ways to help achieve that within your life to the best of your ability, which is all it's about. We're just trying our best. And as Austin said, I'm on all the music streaming platforms as Niall Blaine. I release a lot of pop and electronic music on those platforms. And like Austin also said, Austin has a song coming out the same day that this podcast is being released. It's called Anxious. I did the production and the recording on that song, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I think it is great. I will be including a link inside the description of this episode, and I will also be including a link in the bio of our Instagram and any of our social media sites. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and close it out. With that, again, I just want to thank everybody for listening. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any additional suggestions for this podcast. Or questions.
Yeah.
And
for us, for the podcast, pretty much anything.
Yeah. And for anyone also listening, we did reference a few past episodes within this episode. So if you want to go back to those episodes, anything we posted on our social media in reference to those episodes, and just comment, I'm so sorry, or respond back to a previous comment that you commented on something related to those episodes and reply back to yourself. Now's the time. You can also comment on a piece of content relating to this specific episode and just say, I'm so sorry. And then in the future, if we refer back to this episode, you can reply back to yourself if we refer to it and forgive yourself, or continue to say you're so sorry, or just kind of communicate with yourself from the past to the future, in the present, and so on.
Now, I will say, and I want to add this just real quick, I really love this episode just because we've been wanting to talk about this for a while. However, he was talking about how he referenced the other episodes. I would recommend, if you haven't listened to them,
Oh, definitely.
go listen to them first. You don't have to, but I would say go listen to them first because they all kind of tie into each other in a sense.
We get a little bit more complicated every time, but we
Yeah.
also call back on them so much.
and we also call back on them. So if you want to know the references, if you want to know what's kind of leading up to it, then you'll be able to understand our thought process as well as be able to kind of hold on for the wild ride that is this podcast.
And one last thing I'm just going to throw in here real quick is that hopefully within the next month or so, we're going to start doing an occasional guest on the podcast.
Yes.
And so we've got a couple people in mind, some interesting people. And
We've already
I
got
think
at least one kind of like said he was ready to go.
Yeah. So I think everyone will really enjoy that. And like I said, any comments, suggestions, tips, anything you just want to tell us in general, feel free to hit us up on Instagram at We're So Sorry Podcast. We've also got a link in our bio that links all of our other social medias as well as our personal accounts, our music accounts. Anything, any way you want to try to contact us or follow us is all in the link in our Instagram bio.
Yep.
So with that, thank you guys again for listening. I'm Niall.
I'm Austin.
And we're so sorry.